Hello, my name is Ben. I'm a third year Antioch student, a peer counselor. Um, and so I wanted to do a presentation talking about overstimulation and being quote unquote too sensitive. Um, I think it's an important topic that has been well researched, um, yet still isn't that well known. I think there's a lot of um, maybe confusion or maybe even misinformation about this specific topic. So I just wanted to give a short presentation. This definitely isn't going to be like really comprehensive. This is just an introduction to this subject, and I hope it can maybe be a starting off point if you want to learn more eventually. But for now, I'll just kind of cover the basics. So, the signs of overstimulation. So, first of all, what is stimulation? Stimulation can be any kind of sensory information, like sights, sounds, scents, tastes, etc. And too much sensory information in a certain period of time can lead to overstimulation. Um, so, you know, we'll talk more about how different people have different thresholds for stimulation. Um, but basically, any person can become overstimulated. Any animal can become overstimulated, not even just in humans. Um, Basically, maybe you've had a really long day, maybe you went to a new city and you've just been trying to experience as much as you can. And by the end of the day, you might feel, as listed here, you might feel irritable. You might feel almost something akin to being stressed. Um, and I think we usually, when we're overstimulated, we often say that we feel tired, which, depending on your definition of tired, may be accurate or inaccurate. Because if we're overstimulated, sometimes it doesn't mean that we're tired, as in like we want to sleep, but just tired, as in we just need to rest. We need to lower our stimulation. So, um, these are some of the signs, and again, like there are other signs. I won't go completely in depth, but that's just to give you an idea. um, so some tips for dealing with overstimulation: become familiar with and recognize your level of stimulation. So it's not always a black and white thing. Sometimes you might just be just a little overstimulated, maybe you just had a long day, or sometimes you might be really, really overstimulated. Just you've been really overwhelmed. And so those symptoms of overstimulation may be even higher or maybe even more severe. Um, and like I mentioned before, everyone has a different threshold, so even if you don't feel like you really went and did a whole lot in a period of time, you may just have a lower threshold. It might be what's called a highly sensitive person, which we'll talk about later on. But so when you are overstimulated, it's good to cut out stimulation. Um, and you can do that in multiple ways. I mean, we know that up to 80% of the sensory information that we receive at any given time can be just optical information. So, literally, just closing your eyes can really limit even the majority of the stimulation that you're receiving at any given time. Um, Naps are sometimes the most helpful thing you can do, um, because, of course, you are just cutting out as much stimulation as possible, and um, your body's able to process all of the stimulation that it's been receiving. Noise canceling headphones can also help. Of course, be careful with that because you don't want it to be too noise canceling, because you need to be able to hear fire alarms and that sort of thing. So just keep that in mind. Um, and then zoning out or spacing out is actually a natural coping mechanism often used for dealing with overstimulation. It's kind of our body's way of trying to appear alert, appear like we are taking in the information around us, but in reality, we are kind of closing our mind off to that stimulation, because it is just too much. So that can be a sign. Of course, sometimes we zone out not because we're too overstimulated. Sometimes we zone out for other reasons, but that can be one reason for it. Signs of being a highly sensitive person. So, highly sensitive people, this has been a phenomenon that's been documented and researched for decades, actually, but we haven't used the term highly sensitive person until relatively recently. This was always identified in a negative light, right? So instead of saying a highly sensitive person, researchers might have used the term like more neurotic or more of a higher tendency to irritability, certain things like that. Um, so 20 to 25% of people have a noticeably more sensitive nervous system, um, hence being called a highly sensitive person. And this has also been noticed in animal species as well, outside of humanity. Um, so it is something that's definitely been researched quite a bit. Um, so different signs of being a highly sensitive person can include, but again, this is not a comprehensive list, can include needing more sleep than most people your age. Um, caffeine might affect you more than other people. You may have higher sensitivity to pain. You might be especially sensitive to criticism or critical statements. You might notice that you are perceptive, at least more perceptive than most people seem. You might pick up on little details, whether that be someone changed their hair or, someone got new shoes, whatever it may be. Um, you might be especially sensitive to depictions of violence in media. And another big thing is, social interactions can be oftentimes exhausting because they can be so stimulating for highly sensitive people. Sometimes, not everyone. What we say HSP for short, for highly sensitive person. Not every HSP is the same. So for some HSPs, they may identify as extroverts. Some may identify as introverts. But I think the majority identify as introverts. And so here's some tips about being an HSP in case you think you might be one. So there are some obvious drawbacks to being highly sensitive, of course, needing to sleep more, having a lower threshold for sensory tolerance or sensory intake. But there are benefits as well. Of course, like I said, HSPs can be more perceptive. Um, they can often be really good at reading emotions or reading a room, the sort of social atmosphere of a room, different things like that. So there are definitely upsides to it as well. It's not something to be disappointed by or ashamed of. Um, don't use the trait itself as an excuse, but feel free to let others know when you need time or space to process and recover from a lot of stimulation. This can be really helpful because sometimes it's it's difficult to accept our limitations and be let into it, accept to ourselves like, oh, I'm feeling really overstimulated right now. If and my friends have just invited me to like hang out. I know if I do go, I probably won't enjoy it very much. But I don't want to be, that person who's like, oh, I'm too tired. Sorry, I can't hang out. And so sometimes, it's unfortunate, but we do have to accept our limitations, and you know, you just have to hope that other people can accept that. And because, of course, the alternative usually isn't very great either, right? If you are overstimulated and you do decide to go hang out anyways, maybe you might say some things you might regret because you're just feeling irritable. Or, like I said, you may just not enjoy it because your brain is just trying to cut out the stimulation. So maybe you're zoning out, that sort of thing. And then try to respect your boundaries without overprotecting yourself. This is something, it's tough to find the balance, but it's really important to try and find that balance because, of course, you know, sometimes being overstimulated uh, can be something that we really try hard to avoid, and sometimes we can avoid it a little too much. And so, of course, you always want to respect your boundaries, like I said. But at the same time, it's really important to make sure that you're not limiting yourself more than you need to. And then, so finally, for more information, if you'd like to do some reading on the subject, because again, this was not a very comprehensive presentation, just sort of an introductory thing, then the main book on the subject, the sort of probably the most comprehensive book, I should say, is titled The Highly Sensitive Person: How to Thrive When the World Overwhelms You by Dr. Elaine Aron. And she also has a website, which if you just search the name of her book, you'll find it. And yeah, that has a lot more information, a lot more tips, a lot more ways to identify whether or not you are an HSP. And yeah, more on that subject. One last thing, I'm doing this presentation as a part of my role as a peer counselor advocate. And so we are available every day of the week, the three of us. There's also Ray and Raina. And we are here to provide resources. We're here to listen to students if you want to talk to someone about maybe mental health struggles or maybe school issues. Me personally, I'm available on Sunday afternoons and Thursday evenings. And then you can also see 2 ways to contact me as well. So please get in touch. Please take advantage of the resources that we have available. And thank you for listening. Bye.